Hey, what's going on, everybody? Paul, host for real, here today with Eddie Soto from Serpentera Exotics. Yes, I have that right. Serpentera Exotics. I should start really writing note cards, so I forget everything. So it's actually Thursday night. This will be released next Thursday. So on next Thursday, this is last Thursday, and we are here tonight with Eddie Soto. Again, of Serpentera Exotics. I really like the name. So, Eddie, how are you tonight?
I'm great. Just ate, so I'm
Nice.
full.
Yeah, me
I
too.
ate early. I ate early just for you.
That's awesome. I also ate earlier than normal. Usually, when I do these shows, I'm like eating, running all over the place, and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
I'm just finishing as we're starting. So, today I was like, I'm not going to do that. I don't feel
yeah,
like
yeah.
it. So, I see behind you, there's a whole bunch of Godzillas.
Yeah.
What do we got going? What do we got going on here?
So I'm a super nerd when
Okay.
it comes to Godzilla. This is actually
Okay.
like what there's actually way more down here, and
That's awesome.
I have boxes and boxes of this stuff. This is actually funny thing. This is my first toy I got when I was like 5 years old,
Wow.
and it's actually signed by the original man who was in those costumes from like the first movie all the way up until like the 80s.
Wow.
So
Dude,
so
that's super cool.
yeah, this is what inspired me to do what I'm doing now. So
Yeah, nothing cooler than that. I just got
yeah,
I just got into 3D printing, so I'm like nerding out over things like this is a 3D printed um
oh okay,
Cuban
crocodile
croc.
skull.
Yep,
Yeah,
3D printed Cuban croc. There's a
Gariel.
Gariel. Yeah, I forget stuff.
Oh,
This guy's cool.
is that an Aldabra?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
pointed nose Aldabra. Yep.
Yep. So very, very cool. This one I painted just because we wanted to check and see what we've never used this stuff before. So I was like, I wonder how it does with paint. It works pretty well.
Yeah, that looks
So
good.
yeah, they're cool. So what do you keep? How did you get into reptiles? I mean, we saw
Yep.
the oh my god, no, I already forgot
All the
his name.
Godzillas.
Yeah, Godzilla back there. And I did see a picture on your website. Or on your Facebook. You had Godzilla. I think there was an anole. Is it in front of?
Oh, the one where they're like face to face.
Yeah.
So that was a female green basilisk.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was super cool.
Yeah,
So
so that particular Godzilla I bring to reptile shows. So it's
okay.
really big.
Oh,
Um,
really? Okay.
yeah, it's huge. And I was bringing in, this was years ago, I was bringing in animals from winter, bringing them inside. So I brought it in, and the first thing it did was it stared right at the Godzilla and like freaked out. And I'm like, I got to take a picture of this.
That's
But no,
cool.
like you said, Godzilla is really kind of what got me into it. I was never into dinosaurs; they bored me, honestly. So Godzilla was the thing for me. And
Mhm.
when I was little, I kept saying, one day I'll have a Godzilla. Well, obviously I can't, but um, from there, I was that kid that just took animals, kept them in my pocket, hid them under the bed. I came from just a stereotypical like Spanish family.
Okay.
So, you know,
Yeah.
animals like that is weird. That's
Yeah,
not
you're
normal. So everyone kept saying like, "Oh, he'll grow out of it," or like every kid does this, every boy does this, and he'll
Yep.
stop. Well, it never stopped. So from there, eventually, I guess they realized it was just a serious thing. So I would beg my parents for an iguana. Because when you go to pet stores back in the '90s, that's all there was. Like it was
Yeah.
just an iguana or a Burmese
Yep.
python
Or a red-eared
um,
slider.
or a red-eared slider. Yeah, one
Yep.
of the three.
Yep.
So I picked the iguana. They still wouldn't let me have it, but then my parents got into a divorce, so then it was kind of like, let's get Eddie an iguana so he can cope with everything.
Mm.
So I suckered him into that, and after that, I've been hooked.
Yeah.
And I actually turned it into a breeding project for myself. Like as far as like taking it to the next level, I did that probably like 2008 is when I made that decision.
Okay.
I would watch like the old like Ralph Davis, like ball
Okay.
python. So I would watch his old videos, and that sold me on the idea that you can turn this into something like a business. And after that, I've been hooked.
Mhm.
And I've been breeding, as far as like actually breeding animals, I've been doing that since around the same time, 2007, 2008,
Okay.
around that time.
That's awesome. Now, what is your main species of focus, or do you just kind of whatever comes comes?
So in the beginning, that's what it was. It was just like, hey, you know, let me just, oh, I have a male. Okay, let me go find a female of this,
Yep.
female of that. But it actually started with, I kept everything. So I'm not one of those people who just jumped in and started breeding, but I've kept everything since I got that initial iguana in the 90s. But as far as actually breeding, it was ball pythons.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't really because of what I was seeing on like YouTube or what I was seeing just in general. I had a ball python. Someone just like one of my mom's neighbors or someone just gave her a ball python. I put them together because I didn't have cage space. They started breeding. And I was like, okay, what do I do now? And I Googled it, and that's how I found this weird world.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, it went from snakes. I went from ball pythons to Angolan pythons to spotted pythons. And then I branched out into more like small geckos, more lizards. And then I phased out. I got rid of the ball pythons pretty early because I wasn't a big fan of like the people.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I wasn't a big fan of like people who aren't really animal people breeding animals. I wasn't a big fan of that. So I stopped. The Angolans, I kind of wish I still had because I was breeding Angolans probably 7 years ago.
Oh, they're amazing.
And that's still a big deal now.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of an idiot getting rid of those. But I still have some snakes, but as far as focus goes, it's pretty much medium-sized lizards, I would say, small to medium.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have you have an Aldabra, right?
Yeah.
Or is that okay? So
no, that's my baby. Yep.
Yep. And turning 3 years old this week.
Turning 3 years old. It will be officially 3 years old on July 3rd.
Wow, that's super cool.
I had it when it was not even it wasn't even a pound yet, and I got it.
Wow.
So that was awesome. That's actually kind of a funny story too, because you know I've been with my wife since 2004. So as a joke, every time there was a birthday or a Christmas, she'd always say, "What do you want?" And I'd always joke and say, "I want a Galapagos or an Aldabra." Mm-hmm. And, she'd roll her eyes. It was always a joke, always a joke. And it was one of those jokes I did every single year. Mm-hmm. So finally in 2018 or whenever it was, I said it again, and she's like, "You know what? Fine. I'm tired of hearing about this. She's like, just go get it." She's like, I don't know how to do that. So you find the people and you do it, which was easy for me because I was already connected with people. So literally that weekend I was at the farm and toured the facility and got my Aldabra.
Where did you get it from?
South Florida, Sam Piscucci.
Okay.
It's the Florida iguana tortoise breeders.
Okay. Cool. I know we're friends with John Heidecker. From 3J. So super, super cool people. So John, if you see this, and I highly doubt you will, but if you see this, I love your Johnson's Crocs, and you know that. He knows that. That's unbelievable. Those are my freshwater crocodiles are by far my favorite species. And when we dropped some turtles off there one night really late, and he's like, "Do you want to see him?" I'm like, "Oh yeah." So I can sit there and just stare at him. It's not like you get to see him that often. So
as far as crocodilians, it's the Chinese alligator for me, and then obviously the gharial. That's an amazing animal.
I love Cubans too, but they're scary.
I've heard that.
They're fun. So what is right now? What is your big projects? What's something that you're working on right now as far as projects go?
So as far as this year's kind of like a recovery year for me, because this time last year I just moved into this place.
Okay.
So, and obviously it was literally last year, almost to the month. So that was pretty much when animals are actually breeding and dropping eggs. So they were all thrown off.
Yeah.
And obviously because of the move, I did lose some animals as well. Like rabid animals they were just so stressed out from this move. So this year's really big recovery for me. So right now so last year, this time I produced maybe like a few tortoises. Right now I probably have like around 50 in the incubator now.
Oh, wow.
So I'm recovering. I got like a ton of different geckos that I breed. I probably have like over 150 like Pictus gecko eggs and other micro species.
Okay, let me ask you something. Do you
Yeah.
have frog-eyed geckos?
No, I don't. I got them probably 10 years ago when they were fresh imports, when they were worth nothing.
Hmm.
And
That's my
yeah,
wife's absolute favorite gecko species, and we
yeah,
can't find them
they're gone.
anywhere.
Yeah.
Anywhere. And I remember years ago, they were everywhere. They
Yep. They
were,
were worth nothing.
yep,
Uh,
just another gecko on a table at a show. Like
yep.
what's that? I think it's like a frog-eye gecko. Now it's like, oh, frog-eye geckos, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
It's funny to
those.
see throughout the years what becomes like an animal that's, to the eyes of a lot of people are worth nothing to like,
Yep,
priceless almost.
yep, yeah. I mean, what's the? Trying to think of some of the stuff back in the day that we were always really hot about. Now it's like, you know, either it was really hot then and you couldn't get it because it was so expensive, and now it's worth nothing, or vice versa. You know, like the frog-eye gecko, everybody had them, every distributor had them, every importer had them,
Yep.
and nobody wanted them, and now it's like now nobody has them. Even people that are importing out of there, they're like,
Yeah.
nah, we don't ever get those.
Yeah. It kills me seeing some of the prices for things like that, like the Mexican black king snake.
Yeah.
Years ago, I couldn't give them away to people.
Yep.
Like nobody wanted them. And now that I
I,
don't have them anymore, everybody wants them.
I know Ron's going to watch this and say, screw you, Paul. How about blood boas?
Yeah.
That's horrible. Ron, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I don't mean to laugh at
That's
you,
a
but that's,
taking the bandage off.
oh yeah. And it's funny because I remember seeing magazine articles with those and thinking
Yep.
those are the coolest things ever. And then not seeing them. And now all of a sudden you see stuff 10 grand, 7 grand. You're like, what the hell is that? Oh, it's a blood bow. What? That was like back in the day, those were nothing.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to see
Yeah.
that fluctuation in prices, are just through the roof.
Yeah, that's the story of my life. I've bred and kept a lot of things that at the time nobody wanted or cared, and then me being an idiot, I got rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
And now I look at it, and there's several animals on that list where I'm just like, I had that, and I was breeding that, and everyone's asking me for it because people will scroll through like years past of things that I did, and they'll like message me,
Yeah.
hey, do you still have this, or do you still work with that? And I'm like, no, I don't. But yeah, I have a lot of regrets. I have a lot of regrets of things that I've gotten rid of.
If you've been in this is my opinion. If you've been in the reptile world for more than 10 or 15 years, we all have those regrets.
Yeah.
At some point or another, we've purchased something, we've done something. I mean, I remember I can go back to when female pastel ball pythons were $2,500. I bought a $1,000 male, and we produced pastel ball pythons. And the plan was to produce pastels, to get Mojaves, to produce leucistic, to keep going. And it was okay. We traded 4 pastels, 2 males, 2 females for 1 Mojave male. And by the time that male bred, Mojaves were like $100.
Yeah.
And it was like, that sucked. So it takes the wind out of your sails, when you get into something. And I've done it where I've grown things up for a year and it's like, oh, it looks like nobody's going to want these. Same thing. Oh, these aren't doing anything for me. I tell my wife, this guy wants to buy these and I'm going to buy those. And she's like, well, whatever. And I do that. And then a year later, you're like, oh, this guy's producing babies from those and he's killing it. And here I am with these. And now I don't like these anymore.
So years ago, I bought lesser platinums from Garrick DeMeyer.
Okay.
Way back when, before his website was like amazing. It was like a drag and drop type of website.
Yep.
And he would post his breeding projects for the year. Like he would have this giant thing of the things that he would produce. And out of all those hundreds of animals, he had lesser platinums. I don't even think they call them that anymore. I think everyone calls them butters now. Yeah.
No, there's a lesser, there's a butter,
and then there's
a
the
Mojave.
butter. Yeah.
Yep.
So for me, it was the lesser platinum, and I saw that he produced a pair. So because I would just search and I would stalk people. So I messaged him, and he was like, "Hey, I'm going to keep them," but he's like, "These are the first ones I produced." I'm like, "Whatever you want, I'll pay them." I think I paid like $1,000 a piece. I got them, and then took like 3 years for them to mature. I did it pretty slow. I never rushed my animals.
Yep.
And this was in the height where leucistics were still like a big deal.
Yeah.
They weren't the 100,000 price tag that they were, but it was still a big deal.
Yeah.
And I bred them, nothing happened. And this was during the time where I was getting tired of the ball python people.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was just tired of the whole, I was more excited in other projects. So I got rid of the project. I sold all my ball pythons. Probably less than a year later, someone messages me, and it was someone who bought my female lesser platinum, the adult. And he's like, hey, I got a question for you. He's like, would you breed to that lesser platinum? And I was like, why? He sent me a picture, and she was wrapped around eggs. She retained sperm for him and had a clutch.
Oh.
And I was just like, I remember looking at the message. It was a flip phone back then. So I remember looking at the picture, and I'm looking, and I see eggs, and I almost wanted to throw the phone.
Yeah. Close the phone, set it down, walk away.
So, but I was honest. I told him, I said, hey, it was platinum to platinum, lesser platinum to lesser platinum. And I don't know what happened with that clutch as far as like sperm retention, but all the babies were kinked. They were bad. It was the whole thing was just a Frankenstein clutch.
Okay.
So anything that was leucistic was super kinked. It was just a bad deal. Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks.
But it killed me that,
yeah,
I could have had that.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, that just happened to us. We had retics and berms, and I had a CSP permit, and we knew that the law was going to change here. And you know what, rather than wait until they were going to be, and this is the same thing I always say, I know people don't like hearing it, and I really don't care, but if you have a project that you're invested in, and I loved all my snakes. It wasn't I didn't love them, but that was a project that I was heavily invested in, and I didn't want to have it turn into, well, Florida said you can't have them. So now it's like, okay, well, this $1,000 snake that I have, I put it up online, and somebody's like, oh, you're in Florida? I'll give you $50 for it. Well, no, I'm not going to take $50. Well, okay, no problem. Let me know when you're desperate enough and Fish and Wildlife's knocking on your door to just take it, and you'll get nothing for it. So before the law passed, I was like, you know what, let's take what we have. We have a friend down here that does ball pythons, and we just swap the projects for ball pythons, and we'll just start over again. And, we'll just do it that way.
Yeah.
We love the ball pythons too. So we did that, and we had bred our berm female, our granite berm female, to a granite hypoberm, and nothing had happened. It had gone so much time. I was like, yeah, nothing happened. Sure enough, she laid 16 eggs, same thing. Really nice clutch though. Some super, super pretty animals. Yeah. It's like, oh God, that sucked. That hurt really bad. She couldn't have just laid that before we got rid of her. So at least we would have, but all in all, I think we've all been down that road where we say, I'm not going to do this ever again. This is what I'm going to work with. And it's like, okay, I'm done with this. Let's move on.
Yep.
And then somebody else benefits from it. So, I did that. I'm pretty sure that's what happened with my blue tagoos. I got them from Ron. I had seen his animals. Seemed so calm and so mellow. The 4 that he sent me were psychotic. Like, they were just crazy. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, you know what? I was too new, and I was like, I lost interest in being attacked all the time. So, which is what was happening. Dude, they were nuts. So what else are you working on right now? What other kind of projects do you have going that's new?
So a good one that I'm really excited for is Australian water dragons. I just got actual probably I have 2 clutches of Australian water dragons.
Okay.
That's another species that back then was worth nothing. Now they're ridiculous prices.
Yeah.
So I have them here. So that's one that I'm like super excited for, because that's an animal that I really never thought that I'd be able to work with.
No, are you keeping them outside?
All year round.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that I can say to anybody that has the space to do it, going to see Ron's collection outside, those animals look so happy and so healthy. There is such a difference between, it's astonishing.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been keeping animals outside for years. So there's certain animals that you keep outside that you have to work with. So like whether it gets cold or, you have to change according to what they want. And the Australian water dragons, literally, they don't care.
Really?
I have pictures of them basking when it was like, I think the picture was like 48 degrees outside. It was like 40 something degrees outside, but they were on a rock.
Okay.
And the sun was hitting the rock. And when I did the temp gun, they were about 80 degrees.
Okay.
Yeah. As long as, what I've noticed is they're not dumb animals. As long as they can bask at any point of the day, they're going to eat in really cold temperatures.
Mm-hmm.
So if you offer them food and it's cold, they're going to eat it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like they just hide and disappear. No, they're out pretty much all year round. Obviously, if it's a really cold day and there's no sun, they're going to hide. But if it's cold and there's sun, it's like they know ahead of time, and they'll go, they'll eat, they'll do what they need to do, and then they'll bask for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So for pretty much all year round, I'm feeding them, which is insane. They're such an interesting species.
Now, how are they temperamental? Like, I don't want to say temperamental because I'm sure they're not temperamental, but like flighty. Are they real flighty?
So this is the downside of keeping animals outside. I have friends that keep them indoors, and they're like almost bearded dragon level.
Mm-hmm.
Mine are outside. So when they see me, I mean, the moment they hear me coming, they bolt. So or they pretend they're hiding. And so I don't really get to handle them that much. But when I do, they try to bite me. But
well, that's okay. And that's pretty much the same thing because I asked Ron about the anoles and stuff, and I said, hey, how are they? Are they real flighty? And he's like, yeah, out here they are. He goes, but if you took them home and brought them inside, he's like, totally different animal.
100%.
Yeah. And we've done that with beer. When we were up in New York, we had bearded dragons. You take them outside on a nice day. That's a completely different animal.
Yeah.
Completely different, way more aggressive, way darker. They're just super pumped up, like they really enjoy it. So, So what kind of clutch sizes do they have?
So for them, it was their first year. So, usually you'll get maybe anywhere from 5 to 12 per, and they'll lay several clutches. So it's not like you're one and done.
Yeah.
So, but they're new. So they laid small clutches for me.
Oh,
and they're actually about to lay another clutch in like maybe a couple of weeks from now.
That's good. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Super,
That's gotta be, And I've heard people say that they're, somebody I know was talking about buying some before, and they were over $1,000 a piece.
Yeah.
They're
and it's funny because once you think the price is expensive, another year passes and they double almost. Because when I was trying to get into them, they were just a few hundred. Because I remember when they were nothing, but they were just a few hundred, and now that number has skyrocketed. I go online just out of curiosity, and I'm just like, oh my god, all right, this is insane.
2 years ago at Daytona, was it 2 years ago? Yeah, it had to be 2 years ago. We were walking around, and I said, my son has a Dumeral's boa here, and he's had her for a few years now. She's probably between 10 and 15 years old. She's an older snake, and she's huge. And I said, hey, you know what? We'll get a male this year. Last I saw, Dumeral's boas were $150, $850, $750. Like,
oh yeah.
What? Why? Oh, because Kevin at Nerd produced a whole bunch, and he said $750, so we want $750. I'm like, I hate you, Kevin. but it is. That's another one of those species that they were $100, $150, $125. We had bought one a long time ago, right after we got her, and that snake was nuts. But I paid $125 for an adult male, and we just ended up getting rid of it because he was just crazy. Like we just couldn't. He was so hard to handle. I'd rather work with a mamba. He just was very, very difficult. So
the Dumerals are what I call they're that stereotypical Craigslist animal.
Mm-hmm.
They're that animal that when you go on Craigslist, it's always a Dumeral boa for sale for next to nothing.
Yep.
So it's funny to see how that turned around and how expensive they are.
Yeah. Like I said, I saw babies and I'm like, oh, that says $850. That's got to be the Madagascar ground boa, not the Dumerals. And the guy's like, no, they're Dumerals. And I'm like, is that the wrong price? Is that $7 supposed to be a 1?
Yeah.
Like, no. Like, what the? Whoa.
Yeah, I do the Repticon circuit all over Florida, and people pay those prices.
Yeah.
I see people drop the money for Dumeral boas, and it's fascinating to see.
Yeah. I mean, and like I said, she's the only snake that scares me. She's got the worst feed response. She bites herself. I've had her up in a second level cage, and she grabbed her own side and rolled out of the cage I just don't know if she just doesn't get it. The other day I fed, and she was gnawing on the water dish, and the rat was underneath her chin.
Wow.
Couldn't grab it because the water dish. So I went in to grab the rat with the tongs, and she grabbed the tongs. I'm like, oh, I knew that was happening. That was 100%. So do you keep, what snakes do you keep now?
So it's nothing too crazy. Actually, nothing crazy at all. I have some corn snakes. Just that I just want to play. I never had corn snakes ever.
Okay.
So I'm kind of like reversing.
Okay.
So I have some okatees and some other stuff. I have it written down. Just
Yeah.
stuff that I thought were nice, just to play
Yeah.
around with.
No, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Black rats, some king snakes, just snakes that I can guarantee that no matter what, they're going to eat from me. I don't want to fight with a snake to eat. So, because again, when I used to breed ball pythons, that was the notorious thing.
So I work, I'm not a reptile industry guy. I say this a lot. I'm not a reptile industry guy. I'm more of a hobbyist. We keep boas and ball pythons, and I have an Amazon, or not an Amazon, an emerald tree boa, and then we've got some carpets. But I work in pharma, and I've worked on what we call appetite booster for snakes. So it's in trial right now. There's a handful of people that we've sent samples out to, and so far it's been extremely promising, all the way to a green anaconda that has only been force fed one time and refused food has now had 2 meals in like the last week and a half.
Nice.
So it's looking pretty good. So you don't ever have to worry about that. We'll take care of you. We have a good supplement for that.
Yeah. If I do snakes again, I'm probably going to jump back into like the Angolans. I really enjoyed that snake.
Super cool snakes.
Yeah.
Super cool, but you just don't see them around.
Yeah. It's one of those animals that I see and I'm like, man, I can't believe I got rid of that.
Yeah.
So Angolans would be another one. The emerald tree boas, obviously, I think that's an amazing looking snake.
Mm-hmm.
The snakes, if I got back into snakes, it would not be for like, breeding and all of that. It would just to have them.
Yeah.
I would do, stuff like that.
One of the things that I really, from doing my venomous stuff, my internship, one of the things that we always talked about was, I love eyelash vipers. I would love to do like a 4 foot by 4 foot by 2 foot enclosure with like an emerald tree boa and a pair of eyelash vipers.
Yeah.
Because they come from the same area.
Right.
So something to that effect, I think would be pretty cool, to have that crossover. At the facility, we have a gaboon viper in with some western green mambas. Makes life interesting when you got to move snakes around, but you always know that the gaboon viper is there. He's pretty easy to find, and you just have to pay attention. So
yeah.
But what do you work with any of the anole species?
I have some. Yeah, I have a few. I used to work with the Barbados.
Okay.
Back when that was another species that was crazy expensive and no one was working with them.
Okay.
Those are yeah.
Corytopanes.
Oh yeah, the helmeted iguana.
Okay. Do you work with those?
Yeah.
Okay, because I put that in my because I wanted to ask you. So we've seen those in pet stores. How are they as far as working with them? Are
they're so for me at least, they're pet rocks.
Okay.
They don't really do much. Their whole thing is to mimic leaves, and they just sit on branches and tree stumps, and they just sit there.
Okay.
And in fact, there's actual like documents, like National Geographic documents, that they'll sit in a spot for so long that they'll actually have moss from the rock or from a tree stump starting to crawl up on them.
Really?
And it's not camouflage. It's actually like the moss, because they'll just sit there.
Okay.
And they'll wait for food to come to them. They only get really aggressive when there's like another male. That's really when you see them go crazy. But yeah, they're a pet rock.
Okay.
I have them. I've never bred that particular species yet, but
okay.
They're coming in the country right now by like the hundreds.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they're one of those animals that you can get them easily, but they don't come in the best shape, so you got to work with them.
Okay.
So this animal that literally has to have something walk by it and just stay still, like, it's not for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and we're past that point of, like we just thinned out on boas. I think I'm past that point of wanting to really produce anything to sell. I've joked around and said, you know what, we have all these ball pythons, and honestly, they're ball pythons. The cool thing is all the ball pythons we only have 2 that are the actual same color morph, which is I have a Mojave male that's had hypo, and I have a Mojave, just normal Mojave female that's just super pretty. But everything else is like blah, 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 blah. And
Yeah.
it's like, if we keep them and produce ball pythons, I'd probably honestly try to trade them for food for everything else, because I don't, not doing this. I have a full-time job. You know,
Yeah.
I love doing this stuff. So honestly, it's like you said, you see all these people get in, they pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest in ball pythons, and it's like, oh yeah, they may love that animal because they see dollar signs. But the true, you know, the true breeder that cares about their animals is somebody that's taken the time to really put the effort in to understand the animal, to know the animal.
Yeah.
You know,
It's funny. It's funny because I actually have someone just gave me 2 ball pythons recently that they wanted me to sell for them at one of the Repticons. So they were full grown adults, and I took them, and I didn't even look at them yet. I said, do you know, what is it? This male, female? Like, what do you got? And they're like, oh, we don't know. They got them as pets. I don't know where they got them.
okay.
Full grown, big adults, fed them for years, never put them together. And they're like, we think it's male and female, but we heard ball python breeding is tricky, and they got to have temperature swings and all of this. And I was like, okay. So I took them, and I said, hey, do you care when I sell them? They're like, oh, take your time. We really don't care. They were just having some problems as far as like space.
Yeah.
So I said, okay. So I go, so just before I do this, if I don't sell them, you're okay? They're like, yeah. So okay. So I have them in a rack, and I was thinking about it, like it was like a day before a show, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna put them together and see what happens. It was, it was a male and female.
Yeah.
So I threw them together. Not even 30 minutes later, they were locked. And I took a picture. I sent it to the person, and I was like, see, easy.
Yeah. It's years ago. I would talk to a lady from here in Florida. Her name was Cheryl Bott, and we talked all the time. And super, super cool lady. Still lives here. I think she lives in Lakeland. And she would always tell me, breeding ball pythons, so hard, so tricky, so hard. So one day I had sent Brian Sharp an email about available animals, and he sent me back an email and said, hey, do me a favor, give me a call, and I'll go over what we have available. So I'm like, all right, cool. I'm going to get to talk to Brian Sharp, that's awesome. So I was like, listen, I heard from this lady, ball pythons are really hard to breed. And he was like, listen, let me explain something to you. He goes, I keep my snakes in a basement at the same temperature year round. I put males or females. They do their thing. They lay eggs. The eggs hatch. I sell the babies.
Yeah.
It's like, there is nothing special. You just have to pay attention to the animals and their cycle. I was like, really? And he's like, oh yeah. So from there, that's when I was like, okay, now I got to do this. I got to do this, So it's funny, you hear people say that. They're like, oh, they're so hard, and not everybody can do it. And some people have that, I can't breed this species, but everybody around me is doing it.
Yeah.
But they can't breed this species and I'm doing it. So I think it's just everybody's a little bit different, as far as how they keep and what they do. And, we had our retics the first year. We produced a really nice clutch, and the second year we got skunked, and I followed direction instead of heart.
Yeah.
And in my heart, when I kept ball pythons, I kept impeccable records. I weighed snakes once a month. We
all did.
Yep. You have the scale set up. Oh, the snake went to. Oh, this one pooped. Wait. Oh, yeah, look at that. Look at that. That's exact. I knew that was going to happen. And I felt for follicles all the time, and I did all this, writing stuff down. And with the retics, the first year was really kind of nerve wracking. Steve Tillis helped us out a ton, and the second year I stopped feeding on a normal basis. I went to a big meal and cut the time or doubled the time, and said, hey, they don't eat in the wild like this. So I listened to podcasts, and guys were like, oh, you don't have to feed, every week. And that's what I did in produced ball python or retics the first time, was I fed every Sunday like clockwork. And the second year I produced nothing. And for 3 big females. My biggest female is 18 feet, and the smallest was 12. And I had a 14 to 16 footer in the middle. And I killed myself,
Yeah.
So do you, obviously having a lot of lizards, you must have a substantial bug bill. do you do a lot of ordering at crickets? What are you primarily feeding?
So for the most part, since I do, I'm pretty much at a Repticon almost every other weekend or every weekend. And
Okay,
if
you're
not,
crazy.
I'm at or if not, well, I'm vending. So I kind of,
Okay.
yeah.
Still.
So for the most part, I can always get what I need. But in those rare occasions when those rare occasions where there's gaps, I do buy online, and it is, crickets plus the mealworms plus super worms plus, whatever insect I'm looking in for. I do breed discoid roaches. That kind of helps out a little bit.
Okay.
I do a lot of earthworms. I don't breed the earthworms, but I have the compost.
Yeah, they're easy enough to get, even if you want to buy them, they're not that bad.
So I try to do my best to lower that price because you get the vendor discount. So, and then a lot of the herbivores, I grow most of the food myself. In fact, my herbivores, they only get, as far as food that I pay for, when I feel like it. Whenever I'm at a grocery store and I'm like, oh, look, this is on sale. But for the most part, I have hibiscus, I have mulberry, bananas, mangoes, you name it, I have it growing somewhere. The good thing about this house was the guy who lived here before me, it was almost as if he knew one day a guy who breeds lizards will live here. So I'm going to put all these fruit plants and all these vegetation, and because really I'm using what he has given me. In my old house, I had to put everything there myself.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's here. And the good thing is, like, the grass is not like that stereotypical, like, St. Augustine grass. It's actual real grass with weeds.
Mm-hmm.
During the winter, which is not much of a winter for us, but when it cools down just a little bit, I get a full pasture of clover.
Mm-hmm.
So everything goes crazy from that. So the bearded dragons go crazy for that. Tortoises go crazy for that. Spiny tails, everything goes crazy for that.
Okay.
But occasionally I will go and get some kale. I'll get some collard greens. I'll do all of that. So.
Yeah, Ron told me when I said, man, your produce bill must be outrageous. And he looked around and he went, nah, not at all. They eat all this. And I was like, oh, that's dirty.
Yeah.
I was like,
I think the only thing that I actually brought over myself was in the old house I was at. I pretty much filled the whole yard with cactus for the tortoises and some of the spiny tails. So that was the only thing that I actually brought back with me. And that's usually like almost, it's not a staple because I don't like the word staple, but for the most part, it's almost the staple of what I use in my diets for the herbivores.
Okay.
So
now what tortoises do you have?
So I have a group of redfoots, cherry heads. I just got a male leopard for my female, so I got them breeding right now. So I got the leopards. And then obviously the Aldabra, that's just a pet. I really, I'm not gonna wait 30 years for it to breed.
No.
And then I have Chinese box turtles as well.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Those are cool.
Those are some of the coolest animals you'll ever have.
When you had the video where you were feeding the pinkies. And
oh my God, yeah.
Dude, those things are crazy.
Yeah.
They're crazy.
They eat everything. They don't care. And it's funny because the moment they see you, they bolt, or they hear you. If they hear you, they come out of hiding and they come at you like a dog. So it's funny because, and they're almost like little zombies. So they run at you, and then they're disappointed because I'm not there to see them or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they'll eat so those guys, they love earthworms. So actually, they'll actually, when it rains, they come out and they're actually looking for worms. So they're actually pretty smart. They're pretty intelligent. Okay. So they'll actually hunt their own insects for the worms. But when they see me, they just expect that I'm going to feed them. So they come at me ravenous.
Yeah.
For their pinkies, they go crazy for pinkies. I give them a crock chow, so the Missouri crock chow.
Okay.
They destroy that, and then I have a pretty tree here.
Okay.
Destroy the cherry trees, the blueberries. So they're not picking what they eat.
That's super cool. Those are pretty neat. I've seen other videos where people had like a dozen of them, and they open up the cage door, and all of a sudden the ground starts moving, and they all come running out.
Yeah, and it's funny because they're greedy animals. They don't like when another has food, even though they had. So I in some of the older videos, you'll look. Everybody has fish in their mouth, but one is next to another one. It sees the fish in the other one's mouth. it drops the fish in its own mouth to take the fish out of that one's mouth. And that's what they do.
Just like kids.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So usually when I feed them, I throw a giant pile of earthworms, a giant pile of I feed them silver sides.
Okay.
Again, anything, but in big amounts, because if you just throw a few, they're not each going to grab their own. They're going to grab the one that the other one has.
Yeah.
So then you have 8 box turtles chasing each other down when there's a pile of food just right there.
Yeah. Make for a great video.
Yeah.
So now are you producing those?
I've produced them one time by accident. I forgot what I was doing. This was in my old house. I was just glancing over to see if they finished their food, and there's just a little baby box turtle just hanging out, and it's just hanging out, and it's just eating the Missouri crock chow, just sitting there all peacefully, just eating it. And I'm like, what the heck? Yeah, because you got to be careful, because Chinese box turtles, they'll kill babies and eat them.
Okay.
So I only found the one, so there was probably a couple more.
Yeah.
So now I watch. Honestly, I don't watch them that much, but you
watch them enough to.
I watch them enough to see what they're doing.
Oh, those are super cool. We have 2 redfoot tortoises, little ones, and then we have a 50-pound sulcata tortoise named. We have ravioli, tortellini, and fettuccine.
Yeah.
So
my kids get mad at me because nothing has names.
Yeah.
So my Aldabra has a name.
Yeah.
That's for sure gonna have a name.
Perfect.
But every other tortoise, like my redfoots, they're like, "What's this one's name?" I'm like, "Oh, that's female number 3, or that's female number 4." Like they're just they make fun of me all the time for that.
I don't name anything, and my wife names everything, and she's like, "Serafina needs to eat," and I'm like, "Who?" She's like, "Serafina." I'm like, "Top right cage by the wall." Yep. Okay. She's like, "How come you can't remember the names?" I'm like, "Because honestly, I don't care."
Yeah,
I know. Yeah, I know this boa needs to eat on this day, and it's in the cage all the way to the right on the top. That's what I know. I don't know the name.
I have over probably 100 animals. There's no way I'm naming things.
No.
Even if it has something that's unique to them, like a giant scar or something, I'm not. It's still male number 3 or whatever.
Yep. That's it. The tortoise. All 3 tortoises have names, because my daughter named hers Ravioli, and I was like, "Oh, I want mine to be Tortellini then." And she's like, "Oh, that's funny." And then we had bought my daughter in New York one and had it shipped up to her, and we kept trying to get her to name it, fettuccine, and she's like, "No, I'm naming it Bagel." And I'm like, "What? Named it Bagel?"
Yeah.
She's like, "All my animals are breakfast foods." I'm like, "Oh God, here we go."
Yeah.
So we got the big one. I was like, "That's fettuccine." So now we have the Italian-themed tortoise mafia here. And fettuccine loves aloe plants.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had a really nice aloe
Oh, yeah, they'll destroy everything.
Oh, yeah. Flower pots, end tables.
I used to take in, a lot of people would contact me for rescued sulcatas.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Because, I would rather take obviously anyone would, but I feel like a full-grown sulcata does way more damage than a full-grown Aldabra or a Galup. I've seen the damage that they do, but sulcatas, they just destroy for the sake of destroying. Yeah,
he's a dick. Like if he's super food aggressive. So when you put the plate down in there, if you got to move your hands, he's hissing at you, and he'll charge and try to headbutt you. Oh yeah, he's a piece of work. Yeah. But now we have a nice fenced-in yard. And it's cool to take him outside and watch him. He just runs around the yard eating grass, and really
that's the best part.
Yeah, just loving life. And when the redfoots get a little bigger, we'll bring them out there too. Yeah. Because technically with the HOA, we're not supposed to have any exotic animals outside permanently. So for
10 years, I had my breeding facility in a place called Hunters Creek in Orlando. And for that entire 10 years, they had no clue.
Nice.
No, I had iguanas. I had all my redfoots, my Aldabra. All of that was outside, not fenced, because we weren't allowed to have a fence. Because we had a retention pond in the back. They call it lake. They call it like the lake, but it's a
retention pond. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I did to avoid this, what I did to hide everything, was I grew giant elephant grass.
Okay.
Like, I mean, this would grow like 10 feet tall.
Wow.
And I would, I put it on the outside of the wall of the tortoises, so you couldn't see it at all. And I would walk to my mailbox, the sidewalk of the house, so if anybody was happened to walk, they wouldn't see it. You just see plants.
Mm-hmm.
And I manicured them enough where it looked like it was, you know, it was all decoration. It was all, yeah. And luckily for me, my yard guy was my uncle, so he's not going to rat me out.
Yeah.
And my neighbor was super cool. He thought it was cool. And I did that for over 10 years. No one had any idea. Because again, I was going through the same thing.
Yeah.
HOAs, they don't like the breeding.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, they don't even want breeding of like domestic animals, so like dogs, cats. They don't want that as well.
Yeah.
And when you have like the class 3, your address is there and everything. And and I've had other people tell me stories of where HOA found out that they were doing similar things that I was doing. And I didn't want to take that chance.
Yeah, I'll have my venomous permit. I'm waiting on my inspection here in the next, it should be hopefully any time now. But it's the same thing, you know, my boss, or my old boss, owned the house. He's on the ARB board, and the president of the HOA lives right next door.
Oh.
So when I asked Josh, I was like, what about all my animals? And he's like, keep them in the house. Don't walk outside with a cobra or an alligator or something crazy, and you're fine. And when they put the fence in, I didn't really realize, looking at the yard, one neighbor is a little further forward and only a single story. So unless they come up and look over my fence, they can't see anything.
Yeah.
And even the president of the HOA is 2 stories, but her house sits far enough forward where all they can see is a quarter of the yard. And it says explicitly, animals cannot live outside. It doesn't say they can't be in the house. So if I have a tortoise in my garage,
right, yeah,
you know, so, but trust me, that gives me anxiety.
Yeah.
Big time.
Whenever the neighbor was getting his grass cut or someone was working on someone's yard, I was always checking out, seeing what they were doing. From time to time, the HOA would send out a drone, because they would do like calendar pictures for the whole HOA. So they would do like an aerial vision of like a certain neighborhood or the lake itself. And I was like, man, because if you look at just from my roof, it was a 2-story house. So just from the top roof looking down, you see a giant crop circle of like tortoises. And like, even if you don't know what it is, you're going to look at the picture and you're going to say, what is this in this person's yard? And you're going to zoom in and you're going to see things. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, we had the first time I met the landscaper that we hired, and I had the tortoise out in the backyard, and I hear him up front, and I was like, oh, crap. So I go out in the backyard, and he sees me as he's going past the fence to do the side, and he gets off his lawnmower, and he pops, and he's like, hey, turtle? And I'm like, no, tortoise. And he's like, turtle. I'm like, tortoise. But okay. And he's like, is that yours? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I'm like, well, look, he's helping you out right now. He's going to town. And he's like, I was like, I'll take him in the house. Don't worry. He's like, oh, okay, cool. He's like, I didn't want to run it over. And I was like, yeah, I appreciate that. I was like, but what's worse is, you guys got to be careful opening up that gate, because I have a dog, and while he loves everybody after he meets them, it could be a little iffy if he doesn't know you. It'd be like a loaded gun.
Yeah,
so,
same here.
You know, I'm like, you got to be really careful. You know, just knock on the gate, shake it, yell Poe. If you yell his name, he's going to go nuts. So, you know, but I mean, that's a scary thought too, to have those animals, and, you know, you never really quite know, you know, and it's like, we try to, you know, even at the other house we were at, we had all of our animals in the garage. And before we moved, we got really close with the neighbor. So I had thought, you know what, I'm going to bring the tortoise out, because they have a bunch of kids. And I'm like, I'm sure the kids would love to see the tortoise. So I brought the tortoise out, and they were like, oh man, we didn't even know you had anything like this. I was like, I know. And I'm like, haha, you want to see something else? And they were like, wow, we would have never known you had all these snakes. You know, we had 30 snakes in the garage. They're like, where did all these come from? And I'm like, they're snake moms.
Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, you just don't say anything, keep it quiet.
You keep it quiet. You have to keep it quiet. In fact, in that same HOA, I had probably like a 90-pound, like it was a monster female, a monster female sulcata. She bursted out of the cage. I went to go feed them and the cage was broken. And both the male and the female were gone. So I'm running because it's a HOA. So I'm worried about my animals just disappearing. At the same time, I'm worried about like who's going to see these animals.
Yeah.
And like, is it going to come back to me? So I'm running around. My kids are running around for me. And what had happened was the female was getting bred by the male and was just trying to escape them.
Yeah.
So the female bolted and was almost the neighborhood over, but like as fast as any sulcata I've ever seen. And the male followed her the entire way.
Of course he did.
He followed her all the way to the stop sign, and there was like a family on bikes, like, you know, stereotypical happy family.
Yeah.
And they're stopped and they're looking, and I'm like running, like, you know, like,
yeah,
don't freak out. And they were like, oh, we were gonna see if we could put it back in the lake. And I'm like, no,
God.
Yeah. So my wife brought her car over. We put them back. I drove around in circles so they didn't see where I lived.
Yeah.
But that was a scary moment for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, at 10 years, never got caught. So
we had retics in Palm Coast, and we knew we were getting ready to move. And I was like, you know what? I want to get some nice pictures of these animals outside, you know, before we go. And we don't know where we're going to end up and if we'll be able to take them outside. So we brought them outside. The reaction from people driving by, like one lady stopped. She's like, oh my God, I love snakes. Can I come see them? And I'm like, whatever. One guy stopped at the corner. He's like, those are the things nightmares are made of. Please tell me they're yours. Yeah, I just didn't walk out here and find this, you know, $10,000 animal.
Yeah. You got to be careful. Like I said, I do my best to make sure no one in my area sees what I have. For the most part, like I'm on just an acre. So everyone's pretty much got big properties. So you're not like bunched in. So my one neighbor, he knows I have it because the redfoots are kind of like near his area. Okay. And when redfoots breed, they sound like chickens.
Yeah.
So he hears it all the time, but he's super cool. He doesn't.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
That's good. And you know, if you're not doing anything to harm anyone, and it's not affecting anything, I think people are just way too judgmental.
Yeah.
You know, we've gotten there's rumors obviously every year, but the rumor right now is from multiple sources that they're going to go after all private venomous keepers next year, like they did with the CSP stuff. They figured they won that. It's time to take that away too. So we're going to try to get some footing and hopefully be able to get the word out and maybe talk to some legislators and try to help with, you know, potentially, you know, getting some just revised rules or something to that effect, that it could be a little bit, I want to say, safer. I know there's probably a lot of people that'll watch this that are venomous people. They're going to say, oh my God, you're an idiot. Why would you want more regulation? But at this juncture, I think it's more regulation or a complete prohibited ban.
Yeah.
And you're done, you know. And I think the best thing for everybody to realize is for the safety of our animals and ourselves, things like having a permit, your IND permit to keep antivenom, paying a heavier, if you're going to get your permit, if it's your first year, $1,000, you know, one-time fee, and then $100 a year, you know, make somebody's pocketbook hurt to the point that they're going to say, maybe I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
You know, get rid of the people that aren't serious about it.
Right.
People that don't have the money to invest in caging, where they'll go out and buy an animal and stuff it in a shoebox and stick it in a 20-gallon aquarium with a screen lid and a brick on it. You know, those are the people that we just can't afford to have.
It sucks, but at least you'd be able to keep your animals.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that's
totally understand.
Like I went through this with the retics, where I had them for 2 years and then boom, gone. So all that time and effort, money, and building cages and doing this and doing that and having it was just wiped out with one.
I invested a couple thousand on green iguana mutations a few years ago.
Yep.
So I understand.
Yeah. And that's, you know, unfortunately for us, is as keepers, these are the things that we have to fight. And, you know, I say it all the time, and it's in every single one of my shows. These guys in South Florida that are doing the reckless stuff, you know, it's all, they're all a part of this. And, you know, unfortunately, you know, we need to be a cohesive group instead of factions. And I think some of these guys are just too young and don't get that part. So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You can lead them to water and drown them. Or try to. So do you do Daytona?
I go there to party. I don't go there to vend.
Right.
The one time I did vend, I was so hungover the actual day of the show that I was like miserable hungover. So yeah, I don't do that. I don't vend.
Okay, so
I mean, eventually I will, because I'm older now and I'm not. Those days are a little bit behind me. I'll still party, but not to that degree.
Okay, so 2 years ago was my first Daytona year. Even though I've lived here for 6 years, I've only gone to Daytona 2 times. This will be my 3rd year. So my first year, I discovered cold, unfiltered sake. That's good stuff, man.
Yeah.
It's very good stuff. I also used the porta potty and didn't lock the door and had somebody almost walk into me at the hotel. Yeah, it was very uncomfortable. So the second year, because of COVID, it was still fun, just not as fun, but it was still fun. But we're going back this year, and because we have the dogs here and nobody to watch the dogs here in Orlando, it's just going to be me, my 21-year-old son, and my 16-year-old son. So this year, instead of getting a hotel room, because I didn't know everybody stayed at one hotel. So
the Hilton, yep.
Yeah, we got a hotel like a block down. So it was like my 15-year-old son at that time had to steer me back to the hotel because I was gone.
For me, it was so bad. People were trying to buy like really expensive animals for me, and I'm just like, I was bad. My wife, who is not a reptile person, was the one helping me out.
Awesome.
So she was helping me. That was bad. That was real bad.
Yeah. I've had those days like last weekend.
Yeah, but it was fun. You know, it's funny to tell those stories later.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I still did well. You know, I still did well at the show.
Yeah. Listen, it was. Fuck. What did we do? So we went to Ronin, which is a sushi bar. There was 14 or 15 of us. We went there. We were with Tim Morris, James Oakdale, Tony. Oh my Lord, Tony's gonna kill me. Emerald Tree Boa Breeder in St. Augustine, Tony.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
I know who you're talking about.
He was there, and a whole bunch of other people, Cody, Pia, myself, my wife, my kids, and just, dude, the food, if you go to Daytona, you want sushi, Ronin, absolute, we're going there tomorrow night, absolute best restaurant. Oh, dude, the food is insane. The prices are really good. The owner is always walking around. She's super cool, you know, so we had such a good time. But yeah, it was off the hook. And
yeah,
I'm assuming this year will be, now that, you know, things are kind of lifted, you know, we got a hotel room there. So it's like, I don't want to have to drive anywhere. I want to park my car and not drive anywhere.
Yeah. So every year with the exception of last year, obviously because of COVID, I still went, but usually every year, the family and I, we go to the Hilton and we're there for days. It's a family vacation, beach, everything. And then the Saturday and Sunday, that's my time. And
yeah.
So yeah, we've been going every year as a family. We've been probably going every year for like 10 years now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So my wife and my daughter, you could probably say both boys to a certain extent, but the boys are a little different now that they're older. When we're all kind of hanging out with everybody, they're pretty cool about it. But like my wife and my daughter don't want to do that. They would rather go lay on the beach.
Same with Mike. Yeah.
Yeah. And relax. And it's like,
I have nothing but daughters. So
yeah,
they don't want anything to do with what I'm doing.
God bless you. God bless you. I have 3 daughters and 2 boys and 2 grandkids, and God. Oh.
Yeah. Every time I try for a boy, it's another girl.
Yes, you got to stop at some point. Draw the line in the sand.
I've been doing this for, my oldest is 13, my youngest is 1.
Wow.
Yeah.
My oldest is 27 and my youngest is 16. God, I'm old.
Yeah.
I'm old. I feel it.
Yeah, I didn't realize how old I was until I needed help with this iPad.
Listen, no. That's not fair because, listen, for all of you people that are laughing right now at us, I am by far the same way and I can't figure things out. So it's like, give it to the kids. And either they get super frustrated and it just, nothing happens and it just dies there, or they figure it out and tell me that I'm really old and I need to get with the times.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, things are more geared towards kids nowadays. And
yeah, it's funny because like at reptile shows out here, kids talk, like they'll use certain slang. And then I'll go to my kids. I'm like, what does that mean? And then they have to tell me. And I'm like, wow, I'm that parent now.
Yeah. So I've said things to the kids. And I'm like, what does this mean? They're like, God, Dad, don't say that out loud. Yeah. I'm like, that's what it meant. They're like, you can't say that out loud. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. For me, it was nothing never anything that bad.
Oh yeah. No, I work in pharma and everybody is Spanish. And I know no Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, everybody's trying to teach me Spanish. I learned a lot of bad words right away.
Yeah, those are the first things you learn.
And I would say something to somebody, they'd be like, who told you that? And it was always Monica, who was the one that trained me. And she's like, who told you that? And I'm like, well, so-and-so. And she's like, God, don't listen to them. She's like, that's bad. And I'm like, well, how bad? And she goes, bad enough that I could go to HR and you would be fired. And I'm like, whoa. Don't say that one again. Note to self.
Yeah.
So what big gecko projects are you working with? Any of the racks, the big leechies, or any of that stuff?
Yeah. So I've been breeding leechies probably since 2016. Okay. It's never like a consistent thing because leechies do not breed consistently.
Okay.
So in fact, they're one of those few species that you have to get them to like each other first.
Yeah.
So for the first like 5 years of me getting them, one was on one side of the cage, the other one was on the other side of the cage, and they did not come together. They didn't kill each other, they didn't fight, but they did not interact with each other. And then little by little, you see them together. It's very weird. It's a very weird breeding of how they are. And then from there, I just got eggs. But again, it's never consistent. Like for instance, cresties or gargoyles, you can almost time it. Okay, she laid this day. Okay, so next month, this time, she's gonna lay. Garg or leechies, it could be you get a clutch, and maybe 6 months later you'll get another clutch, or maybe next month. Like you cannot put a timestamp on those eggs at all. Or sometimes they don't even lay for a whole year or 2 years, which is it would kind of justifies the price tags that you see.
And that's what I was just going to ask is that why the price tags are so high? Because we've always wanted to I would love to get one of the big males and just have one to have one, because I'm not really interested in doing geckos again.
Yeah, it's an animal that I have just because I enjoy it. I'm never looking at that animal as like, hey, I really need you to help me pay my electricity bill. It's like it's just a cool animal. Yeah. So I work with basically like a partnership with someone else because I'm a skinny guy, so I like my house nice and warm. And leechies don't like it warm. So where this guy lives, it's a little cooler. Okay. So he has pretty much, it's like a joint project.
Okay.
That's cool. We crank them out. They're my animals, but he cranks them out for me. So we have like a little deal.
Okay.
That's I have that species, and I work with a couple of the day geckos.
Okay.
So I have the Phelsuma standing eye, which is another species that they kind of have to like each other. It's not like you put them together. It's not as crazy as the leechies. They'll kind of hang out with each other for a little bit, and then they'll start producing.
Okay.
That's a cool species. And then obviously I work with like the regular, like Grandis, high colored red. So they call them like the crimsons.
Now so I've only ever had to deal with them once, and they were crazy, and they get out of the cage and you chase them around for a whole day trying to catch them.
Yeah.
Is there a trick to them? Like just don't open the door?
You gotta watch them. Sometimes they'll bolt. The ones you gotta watch out for, the tiny species. Those are the ones that will they'll bolt on you. For the most part, the larger species, they're fairly intelligent, so they're not going to bolt on you unless you are intentionally trying to grab them.
Okay.
That's when you usually get them to bolt, and you can't grab them because if you grab them, their skin rips off. That's like their defense, and once the skin rips off, it's like it almost looks like raw chicken underneath. It's disgusting. Yeah. So when I catch them, I have to cup them. So you get the cup, and then you slide the lid. So that's how I catch them if I have to.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. So in other words, that's just another one of those that you put in a nice bioactive and just leave them alone.
Yeah, I have mine are in screen cages outside, fully planted, and
as
I don't really
as you can get.
I don't really mess with them too much. When I only collect, like, just to collect eggs and switch out food.
Okay. Any other cool geckos?
I breed. They're cool to me.
They're all
So like Pictus geckos, I breed a lot of. It's like the feeder gecko back in like the 90s and 80s.
Exactly.
Those things are pretty much like they're born and then they like produce a bunch of babies. So I have, like I said, I probably have like 100 or so eggs of those. Yeah. And I don't even have that many adults. Like that's just how much you'll get.
And they look similar to a frog eye gecko, right? Close.
They're more slender.
Okay.
They're pretty cool because they're not intelligent, but they're always watching you. Like they want to see what you're doing. You have your food. They're watching you. They're trying to see what you're doing. So they all come up because I keep them in racks. So they come out. They come to the front of the rack and they're just watching me. They're just not even if I have food. They're just seeing what I'm doing.
Okay.
Super easy animal to breed. They come in different mutations now. So I used to work with a whole bunch of them, but I got rid of like all those cool stuff, and then now they're worth a lot of money.
Exactly.
So I'm building it. I'm building it back up to what it was.
You work with any tokay geckos?
It's another story. So I used to breed the powder blue, the patternless.
Okay. Oh.
They were worth maybe $300 at the time.
Oh.
And I bred those. Nobody cared. I had them for sale for probably $400. Nobody cared. Nobody batted an eye. I produced so many. No one cared. That was the thing. Nobody cared. Wow. So I got rid of them, and now they're like $1,000. They're hard. They're hard to find.
Yeah.
And my heartstrings get pulled because again, people will see these old pictures, and they'll ask me, "Hey, do you have this available?" And I'm like, "No, man. That's like 8 years ago."
Yeah. Nobody looks at the date.
Yeah. No one ever looks at dates for my animals.
Like that was like 10 years ago. What do you mean?
But yeah, I bred those, and that was fun. That was a fun species because they hated me.
Yeah,
so I just enjoyed that aspect because I'm very like I don't have the discipline to work with like venomous. Like I would never have venomous just because I don't have that discipline.
Mm-hmm.
So like the tokay would be like the closest thing.
Yeah,
because it hates me and I don't want to get bit by it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
you're all bad to get bit by a moth.
Yeah. So that species, I really enjoyed having it, but yeah, awesome. Another regrettable species. It was awesome hearing them, call out for each other.
Yeah.
So,
now, do the tokays do that too, right? They call. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. In fact, they do it sounds like they're saying tokay when they're calling. Very loud, very very loud.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, my neighbors were like, "What the hell is that?" Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Nothing to see here.
Yeah, but yeah, no, that was an awesome species, and I really gotta stop looking at what people don't care about and just keep it.
Just keep it because you love it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the line that we've kind of drawn at this point is, we got rid of a bunch of other boas that we had, and we just kept the stuff that we truly enjoy, like Aiden's Dumeral's boa. It's not going anywhere. It's my 16-year-old son's snake. That's, and then we have a hypo jungle, another hypo, and then my daughter actually bought my wife in 2018 at the DeLand Repticon. She bought her a really pretty light colored boa, and she's just not going to go anywhere.
DeLand, that must have been a while ago because they don't do that show anymore.
Yeah, it was 2016 or 2017 or 2018.
You were probably like the only person there.
Yeah, there wasn't very many people there.
Yeah, I was at that. I was vending that show.
Okay. Yeah, we've been to a few Repticon shows. We've definitely probably seen you.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh yeah, I'm there.
it's funny, you go and, we went to and I'm not in the market to buy stuff. So it's like, I don't want to spend the money to go to a show and just, I mean, but we went and saw Jeremy Bod, who is a friend of ours that we met on the Snakes of the Fat Man 15 Minutes of Lane podcast. And,
Yeah.
so it was cool. We got to kind of go hang out with them. And, you walk around and I'm like so tempted. I'm like, oh my God, I got to have that. Oh my God, I got to have that.
Yeah.
My wife is like, "No."
If you ever go to the reptile shows, I always have a giant Godzilla with me.
Okay.
So if you're ever there, I have a giant Godzilla with me.
Okay. Well, listen, we'll wrap this up now. I'll let you go.
Yep.
Before we go, how can everybody find you? Obviously.
Yeah. Serpentera Exotics, Facebook, Instagram, and everywhere.
Okay. Every Repticon show. Don't be shy.
I am at every single Repticon in Florida, with the exception of Miami and Tallahassee.
Yeah, that's like
too far.
opposite ends of the world.
Yeah, too far.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, everybody, good luck. Have a great night. Hold on one second, Eddie. Don't go.
Yep.